Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing a pen tutorial on drawing a wolf under a wolf moon for the month of January. If you want to get yourself a reference photo of a wolf that you can work from, and then the rest we're going to improvise. So please do grab yourself a reference picture and the materials you need, which I'll go through in a minute. Just to show you, this is what I've done, but yours is going to look different depending on the wolf picture that you choose and obviously your improvisations. But this is the sort of theme that we're going to go with because it's really good to have an intention before you start a picture. If you have that intention of something that you're trying to draw or paint, then you can sort of kind of work with that as you go along. But it's really good to have that initial idea. So this is what I'm trying to get you to do here, and also I just want you to have fun with it. This is what I promote. Let's have fun in our creativity. We don't need to necessarily aim for a perfect photorealist picture of a wolf. Just want you to enjoy the process and enjoy it, have fun, and if you're ready, let's get started. You're going to need fine line pens in a variety of sizes, a reference photo, piece of paper, pencil, protractor or ruler, and a rubber. The protractor or ruler is just used for gridding purposes, where I'm just doing I'm basically doubling the size of the line. So on the reference photo I did 1 centimetre, on the page I'm doing 2 centimetres. I'm going to start with just drawing in the outline using a pencil, just really lightly sketching it in, using those grids as a really handy guide to get the lines in place. After that I just start adding in some light details, and then I will start focusing on direction of hair flow, which is really important when you're drawing anything with hair. So animals or human hair, you really want to try and get that direction of flow in there. Then you want to start getting in some areas of shadows and shading, trying to keep the highlighted areas in mind. Once you've done that lightly with the pencil, you're going to want to start going in with the pens now. I'm starting with like a 0.2 size nib, so it's not too fat. I just want to try and get those shades in lightly, because once you put in your shades, there is no going back. When you're working with pen, you can't erase it. So I kind of like to go lightly to start, and then I go a bit darker as I go on. So I'm lightly going in with these shaded areas, maintaining that direction of hair flow the whole way through. That is really important when you're drawing something like an animal, if you want to try and get it as close as possible. But you do you don't have to do that. This is the way I'm doing it, it's the way I'm showing you. And obviously sometimes it is actually really hard to know exactly where you're going with the line direction. It can be a really helpful idea if the reference photo you're using doesn't show the line or direction of hair. You can always go on to another photo and maybe look to see another picture of a different wolf. That could really help you get an accurate guideline. So I'm just going to keep going in there with the pen, just getting in those shaded areas, always maintaining the direction of hair flow. Once you're happy with that, you can start working your way down to the bottom of the wolf and start trying getting in those shapes. Sometimes hair naturally like clumps together and then it thins off at the end, and I'm actually exaggerating it slightly in my drawing. Sometimes it's okay to do that. You know, you don't have to try and copy a photo exactly as it is. Art is art, and you know, it's whatever you make it. You don't have to make something look exactly as it is. And to be honest, it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to make something look photorealistic. If that's what you're aiming for, then you can use this guidance that I'm giving you and try and just keep working your skills to achieve that. Just, keep practicing, keep practicing. Practice does really, really make all the difference. Now just going in to the eyes, adding some more detail, and just being really mindful of the shape, because if you get the shape wrong, then it could potentially look more like a bear or something else. So when you're drawing an animal, you need to look at the shapes of the eyes, shape of the nose, shape of the mouth, and look at the contours, the direction of hair, and certain things like this really do define, make the difference between one animal to another. Because as you know, some animals have a very similar shape in face, and it's those tiny little details which really does make the difference between a lion and a wolf, for example. Sometimes in the past I've actually tried to draw a wolf from the mind, and it turns out to look like a lion, to realise I actually got the shape of the mouth and nose area completely wrong. So it's definitely helpful to work from a reference photo. And if you get stuck with the areas of shading, it's definitely, as mentioned before, a good idea to use another reference photo if you have to. I was at this point in this picture quite weary of the fact that it was starting to look like a raccoon. So what I did was I actually just carried on, and I just carried on going in quite lightly. And then later on in this video, I do actually turn to another photo that's more detailed to help me with those final facial features to give me that definition. So now I'm still just going in with really lightly with a small nib, and I'm just putting in some fine hairs, filling in those gaps. This isn't going to be a white wolf. It's as I say, it's a wolf, so it can be any colour. It's in fine line pens at the end of the day, so there's no colour to it. But generally I do like to add more details. That does mean adding a bit more pen mark, so it's probably going to be a bit darker. I don't really want to draw a white wolf because to me there's not that much line in a white wolf. So I'm just relaxing about the colour of the wolf in general, and you can too. So as I said earlier, you need to really, when you're drawing an animal, look at the features that make it stand out compared to, say, a different animal. So the wolf have this shape of eye, they have this kind of nose. There's certain areas where there's more shadow, and it is really important to get those right if you're trying to draw a specific animal. So here I'm just showing you the difference between long hair and short hair. So around the eyes and the nose area, the hairs are going to be a lot shorter than the hairs around the body and the outer part of the head. So when you're working with fine line pens, and you want to show that length of hair by the length of line that you're drawing. So around the body and around the outer side part of the head and underneath the neck, the chest area is definitely long hair, so get those long lines in there. And then obviously, like I said a minute ago, as you get closer to the middle of the face, between the eyes, the hairs are a lot shorter, so in those areas you're going in with smaller lines, like a lot shorter lines. So as you go along the picture, just keep that in mind. So when you're making a picture like this, you want to keep things in mind the whole way through. You want to keep in mind areas of shadow and light. That's really, really important. You want to keep in mind direction of hair flow. That is also really important. You want to keep in mind the shape. You also want to keep in mind the length of hair. In some areas it's longer, some areas it's shorter. So the main part of the wolf is done. Now I'm just showing you here. I'm basically just improvising, so I'm kind of just playing along partly taken it from the reference photo, just because it's going to make it a bit easier, but I'm actually making it up really. So I'm just drawing in some ground, so ground that you would find by a tree. So I'm using my imagination here, and I'm just drawing in twigs, I'm drawing in some stones, drawing in some pebbles, drawing in the tree, adding in the shaded areas. This is really going to give it some depth. And I'm making these a bit darker because the darker bits are the bits that are further away from the eye. So they're the bits that are deeper. So they're going to be the bits that are going to have more shadow. In this picture, I am actually going to draw a moon and some moonbeams. I'm going to attempt that, so do follow along if you want to see that. So actually, when I'm drawing this bit, I'm imagining the light source coming from where the moon is going to be, which is actually going to be in the top left corner, about where his right ear is. So you have to imagine the light coming from there. And that's where you're going to add the shades and keep the highlights. Now, I could spend hours and hours and hours trying to make this a perfectly neat picture that is close to photorealism, but as a person in general, I get bored drawing the same picture for so long. I don't have the attention span to sit there for so many hours and spend so much time on one picture. That's maybe a bit different with a painting, but when I'm doing a drawing, especially now where I just want to show you something, I'm not going to spend hours and hours and hours and hours getting in exact details. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, nature is not, you don't always get straight lines in nature anyway. So actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if lines are a bit scruffy. It doesn't matter if they're a bit off. And am I happy with that in my art? Yes, I am. As long as I'm happy with the picture as a whole, I don't mind if there's areas where it is a little bit scruffy. And you can feel the same way too. But if you are aiming for something where you want a little bit more of a photorealist approach, then you may want to spend a lot more time on a picture and maybe make a sketchbook. Try and really work on those areas that you struggle with, and just practice working with shadow and practice these lines and contours. At the moment you can see I'm working with contours here. The contours here really almost make it 3D like it actually makes part of the tree trunks or the branch, the main parts of the trunk and the roots are now coming out. Working with contouring with your pens actually does help things look more 3D. So it's a really useful thing. I did do a tutorial video not too long ago showing the effect of contouring. So now I'm just going to rub out all these pencil marks because I'm going to start improvising. Again, I love improvising stuff. That's generally how I make most of my art. I'm going to add in a moon and I'm going to go lightly again. I'm going to add the moon and I'm going to make it far in the distance. So I'm going to add in some mountains and some landscape, also way in the distance. So the mountains are obviously going to be quite small because it's far away. And then I'm just going to add some other shapes here and there to show the landscape from near to far. So just keep going in there lightly with a pencil. Just also here, I'm adding in just the direction of moonbeam. So we all know that rays of light, when they come out, they generally are straight. It's very rare to see bent light, unless it's going through a prism or something and you're looking at it at a funny angle. But generally, when light comes out of its source, it's always in a straight line to our eye. So when you're drawing lines of light coming from the light source, you're drawing it as if it's coming directly out from every single angle that you could show. That's quite difficult to explain, so I do apologise. It's almost like the light is just flaring out. So anyway, moving on. At the moment, I'm kind of just going back to these twiggy areas because actually I get bored in one place for too long. And also it is really good to work with the picture as a whole rather than focusing too much on one part. It's a very good idea to work with the whole picture, go back to bits, because then you're sort of looking at it as a whole. And it also prevents you working too much on one area, getting it absolutely perfected. And then, if you go on to another area and you mess it up, then spending so much time on that first area was a complete waste of time because the whole picture's ruined. So try and work with the whole picture as a whole in general. Don't spend too much time in one place. Just keep that pen moving around, keep the eye moving around, make sure the shapes are correct, dimensions, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The perspectives are correct. So you just keep those in mind as well when you're drawing things with landscape. So I'm going back to the tree here, just adding in a bit more definition, a little bit more shadow, just trying to really show those areas of depth. And just keep going along and along and along and along. This bit was quite tedious. I was beginning to get quite bored with this bit. But actually I'm really happy with the final result. So now I'm just going in with a big size nib, so 0.7 here I'm using, to just get in some of the background. So I'm just going in with like almost block shading, and I'm adding in those mountains. But as I'm doing so, I'm keeping in mind the light. Where is the light coming from? The light is coming from the moon. So naturally areas of light are going to remain light. So I'm really trying to show that with my shading. Obviously the pen is the areas of dark, so the areas of shadow. And just always keeping that in mind, especially when you've got something such as powerful as the moonbeams. You need to almost keep those bits in the areas of highlight, almost keep them as white as possible because it will make them stand out more. So just keep going along, More shadows, improvising. If you want to get a photo to help you with this bit, please do so. Right, so now this bit is, it's weird. I'm drawing a sky, showing light, but it's a night sky. So I'm not drawing the sun, I'm drawing the moon. So I need to make the sky dark, but I also need to show the light coming from the moon. So to do this, I'm basically starting with a really fine nib, going along the direction of light around the whole moon with a fine nib to keep that bit as light as possible but also dark. I'm just putting in some definition in the moon as well, adding some craters and stuff like that. Just really lightly because I might not like it, so I'm just going to go in lightly just in case. And again, I'm improvising. If you want to work from a photo, you can. If you want to get the craters exactly as they are, you can get a photo. There's plenty of them online. Use them as a reference. Use reference photos. They are so, so helpful. You can draw from the mind, from the imagination, and you can do that, and it's actually really fun, and it's quite interesting to see how your mind works. Like, what do you remember something to look like? Anyway, going back to the moonbeams here. So I went in earlier with the light pen, and now I'm going in with a darker pen. But here you can see I'm going around the wolf, being really, really careful because I want to show light on the wolf. Now, because I didn't intend to do this in the beginning of the picture, I now have to try and show the highlighted hair on the wolf after. So I'm basically just keeping a light area above his head to show the light. Nearer to the tree, nearer to the mountain, obviously it's going to get darker the further away from the moon you go. So I'm using a darker pen. I'm still maintaining those straight lines. I'm adding in some definition just to show some beams of light, and also again to just try and add some highlighting to the wolf, to the hair of the wolf. Just keep going in, just until I'm happy, just until you're happy. You just keep going lightly, going carefully and mindfully. Like at this stage, with each sort of, in fact, throughout the whole drawing, with each pen mark you make, be mindful of what you're doing. Think about things before you put the pen on the paper, because when you put pen on paper, there's no going back. You could, if you wanted. Now, this is something I used to do, and to be honest, I would still do it. I do still do it sometimes, and actually it's quite nice. If I want to go in there with some white marker, like some gel pens or some white paint or something, just to bring out those areas of highlighted that if I've added too much black, if I've added too much pen, it's not the end of the world. Get some white paint and paint in those highlights. That would turn it into a mixed media piece of art. It wouldn't be you couldn't call it just a fine liner drawing because you've got some of the medium on there. But you can do that, and I used to do it, and I come out with some really nice pictures doing that. So go ahead if you want to. So come back down to the bottom of the page if you haven't already done so. Add in just some more shadows, some more ground, and basically now we're just working to finish the whole picture off. Just try and get it completed. Go in with some block shading if you need to, like I am here. Just keep going with that pen. Obviously, when you're doing things like block shading, use a bigger nib, it's a lot easier. Takes you less time. And it's better for the pen. So, back to the moon again, as I'm going around working with the whole picture as a whole piece. So I'm going back to the moon, and I'm decided I'm just gonna outline it very slightly. Because I want to. Maybe add a few more definitions into the beams. Sometimes I make art like this and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But in the end, I'm happy with the overall picture. So for tiny little marks I'm not happy with, I'm not going to stress too much. And it's the same for you. Don't stress. Enjoy it. And art is art. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. And if it does bother you making mistakes, practice. Keep work out why you made this mistake. What was it? Where were you going wrong? Was it to do with your direction of hair? Was it to do with the shadow and light, the shading? Then do some more practice on that. See, in this particular picture, I'm not really happy with this paw that I've done. I don't know what I did. And you might find that too. You might find that there's bits that you're not happy with, but overall, I'm really happy with this drawing, so I'm not going to let that little paw stress me out. I actually really like this finished piece. I do obviously try and go back in there and just really, really carefully, because when there's an area of something you don't like in art like this, if you don't like it and you keep working at it, trying to make it perfect, you're at very high risk of making it so black that it's just too black. It will become a very, very dark picture. So you need to be really careful. Don't be too much of a perfectionist, because that perfectionism could potentially ruin a really beautiful picture to begin with. So in this bit of the picture, this is a bit I mentioned earlier where I did use another reference photo, another picture of a wolf, because I was concerned my wolf was looking a bit like a raccoon with its dark areas on his face. So I just had to double check that with another picture, and you can do that too, and it actually changed it for me. Like, it made me feel okay at first, but now I'm actually really happy with it, because I'm just putting in those fine end details which really do make this more of a wolf. And now I see him, and to be fair, I've seen him as a wolf the whole way through, but I did also see the potential that he could end up looking like a raccoon. And this is just what happens when you draw, when you paint. It's a process. You know, sometimes mistakes are made and you just have to work with those. So I'm just being so careful with where I'm putting these tiny marks. Really, really careful. I always think of wolves having these kind of eyebrow things, like they've got really defined, they're not eyebrows, they're just their fur, but I don't know what it is. I think it's like an indentation above their eye that looks, it's just like an area of shadow that gives it this shape, and it's, to me, that I see that in wolves. So that's something I felt was quite important. So here is my final drawing. I just want to show you. I know you've already seen it the whole way through. I'm really happy with it, actually. I think it's turned out really nice. I hope you're happy with yours. Please do let me know how it went for you in the comments. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps me grow as an artist and as a content creator. And do subscribe to my channel for more content like this in the future. Take care. Bye.